Session 600, Deleted Portion. Now, good evening. First, we will have our fireside chat. You have made a good beginning. Robert has noticed several occasions when he projected negatively in your direction. In other words, instances where he misinterpreted your meaning or anticipated a negative reaction. Your remark earlier to him to relax in the moment is indeed an important key, and he needs that reminder. The kitten was a way of bringing attitudes and problems to the surface, while incidentally helping a young animal. Your plans are good ones, and I will have more to say in that area. The trip is also advantageous, and it would not hurt you to keep your eyes and ears open during that journey. There have always been possibilities for you, for example, in Florida, that you may or may not want to take advantage of. Your lines of communication are improving. Robert has greatly appreciated your efforts. You may feel free to ask me about your plans, and I will give you what help I can. The emotional basis of your relationship is beginning to take its proper balance and direction. Now, do you have any questions on the material just given? Ralph said, "No, I guess not. Things seem to be going well." Seth said, "Then give us a moment." Seth said, "Consider again for the sake of a knowledge, the summary language as compared to Impressionism. At its best, Impressionism achieved a certain focus unknown to Western art up to that time, in your terms, offering a breakthrough from coercive objective form into the moving vitality that gives objects, say, their durability and shapes their images. Using the art form, the artist in a strange way broke through line, destroyed what would seem to be the literal continuity of the objective shape. At the same time, a few lines were used to hint at a variety of unseen, apparently unstructured objects, so that in that regard, the line became in the hands of a master a strong symbol, hinting at other realities that lay within the seemingly distorted portrayal of objects. Do you follow me?" Ralph said, "Yes." Seth said, "At its poorest, communication between the viewer and the painting was lost, for a poor artist could not work that magic with lights or colors. A thorough knowledge of form was needed, so that it could be represented by light or color. At its best, Impressionist art, by its very lack of indelible, delineated form, suggested all form and the vitality that gave it force. Now, the summary language will avoid specific, indelible, rigid pattern in much the same way. By changing the names of objects, you automatically look at them in a new fashion. Yet, certainly all objects will not be given names, for this would defeat our purpose. Instead, the relationship between objects will be stressed through sound. The emphasis will be on the object's placement in chords, in title and space as you think of it, and on the ever-changing pattern of force that constantly alter relationships of any kind. There will be words, for example, for feelings that you will be asked to imaginatively change into objects and back again, to project into time as you think of it, and sense the differences in the feeling's relationship to yourself. This can be compared in quite other terms to taking an object from one table and placing it in another room, and trying it out in various locations. But we will be working instead with feelings instead of faces and psychological locations. The sounds used in the language have their own importance and will be in their own way representative or suggestive of feelings that have been largely unconscious. Generally speaking, the feelings, however, are the tail end of inner cognizance, and we will use the sounds to carry us further and further into those inner landscapes where both objects and their representatives must finally desert us. We will initially be using the language so that we can finally cease using it. In other words, this will be the beginnings of somewhat more profound methods of working through the inner senses. Now, you may take your break. Now, our use of the language will not be heavy-handed. Use of it, however, will allow you to more clearly perceive your own inner reality, your physical and psychic experience. You will no longer translate inner experience with the same automatic glibness into stereotyped verbal patterns of images, but will be far better able to experience it for itself. The language will be a necessary aid in the physical statement that must, of course, finally be made. But the final statement then, or physical interpretation, will be far truer to your original experience. Now, you almost automatically translate a feeling into a definite rigid word and an image. The two go hand in hand. For physical reasons, of course, you need that camouflage interpretation, but you also need to learn the difference between it and inner cognizance. You will also become far more aware of the actual processes of perception. There are many inner experiences, obviously, that cannot be expressed clearly or with any justice through even the combined use of words or images. Use of the language, utilizing sound but not recognizable word symbols, will allow you to understand and express some of these. Doing so will enable you to express far more physically also. There are, to say the least, multitudinous levels of feelings that merge to form what you would call a given experience. Alphabets can hardly hope to give you more than, if you will forgive me, lip service to these. Each symbol in an alphabet stands for therefore unalterable symbols beneath it. Now, the human voice, as singers know, can be used to express far more qualities of feeling than the normal unadorned speaking voice. Sound itself, even without recognizable words, carries meaning. Oddly enough, sometimes the given meaning of a word does battle with the psychic and physical meaning of the sounds that compose it. As I have said often, language is used as often to distort as it is to clearly communicate. There is a structure within the Sumeru language, but it is not one based upon logic. Some of its effectiveness has to do with the synchronization of its rhythms with bodily rhythm. The sounds themselves activate portions of the brain not usually used in any conscious manner. It is a disciplined language in that spontaneity has a far greater order than any you recognize. Now, give us a moment. The word Shambhalina connotes the changing phases that the inner self adopts through its various experiences. Now, this is a word that hints of relationships for which you have no word. Shambhalina, Garforti, or the changing phases of the soul, smile and laugh at each other. Now, all of that is in one phrase. By saying the words and opening your perception, the meaning becomes clear in a way that cannot be stated in verbal terms, using your recognizable but rigid language pattern. So, we will be dealing then with concepts as well as feelings, but seeking them through the use of a new method, and sometimes translating them back and forth for practice. Kodalas are invisible symbols that surface. As they surface, they show the universe in a new light by the very nature of their relationships. In a very limited fashion, alphabets do the same thing. For once you have accepted certain basic verbal symbols, they impose their discipline even upon your thoughts, obviously since you think in words so often. They throw their particular light upon the reality that you perceive. As for example, you name objects. Alphabets are nevertheless tools that shape and direct perception. They are groups of relationships that are then transposed upon, in quotes, reality. To this extent, they shape your conceptions of the world that you know. Their discipline and rigidity is considerable. Once you think of a tree, in quotes, as a tree, it takes great effort before you can see it freshly ever again, as a living individual entity. Kodalas do not have the same rigidity. Far greater, immensely greater, fluidity operates. Inner, invisible relationships are allowed to rise. The acknowledged, recognized reality viewed through the lenses of these emerging relationships. Then, the Kodala changes its nature, becomes another new emerging group of relationships, another lens in other words. Do you follow the connections? Ra said, "Not too well, because I was busy writing. I think I understand what you mean. I have it all down all right." They said, "Give us a moment." It is as if then you had alphabets that worked for the other senses, for touch and smell. Meanings are allowed to rise and fall when using your established ideas of language. Meanings are instead rigidly attached to given experiences, so that perception must be held within certain well-defined limits. Now, I will let you take your break. Now, in your turns, the Sumerian language is not a language, since it was not spoken verbally by any particular group of people living in your history. In quite different terms, however, it is a language that is at the base of all languages, and from which all languages spring in your turns. Alphabets do not change, or you would consider them relatively useless. Kodalas, as I told you, do change. Alphabets are the physical aspect of Kodalas. One very small aspect of a Kodala is signed upon and in quotes, frozen, so to speak, its ordinary motion and the rhythm of its changes, therefore unrecognized. The living vitality of a Kodala rises out of the universe's need to express and understand itself, to form in ever-changing patterns and take itself by surprise. Patterned language allows for no such surprises. The summary language has been used in the dream state. The language itself seeks out meanings. It is hidden within all languages, whether or not they sound at all similar, for it is based upon the immaculate integrity of feeling, for which sounds is only a dim representation. It builds up from feelings that are by their nature denied clear expression through the specific, but therefore limiting alphabet systems. It allows the perceiver to face experience much more closely, and once having done this to some extent, he is free in other areas also. If you were an accomplished artist in many fields, you could translate a given feeling into a painting, a poem, a musical masterpiece, a sculpture, a novel, an opera, into a great piece of architecture. You would be able to perceive and feel the experience with greater dimension, for your expression would not be limited to translating it automatically, without choice, into any one specific area. Its dimensions would be greater to you then. So, a Kodala as opposed to an alphabet opens up greater varieties of experience and expression. At basic, creativeness is behind all art forms, so Kodalas are behind and within alphabets. Kodalas represent the ever-changing unfinished relationships that can never be fully expressed, and that constantly seek expression. Through this station and the last, I have tried to show you through some examples the different ways in which the word Kodala can be used, and by interference the ways in which the use of this method will enrich your understanding and perception. Your closer relationship will have its effects upon our sessions also, for your energies are at peace. And now I bid you a fond good evening, Kodala and all. Rob noted, laugh. Rob said, "Thank you very much, Seth. Good night."